Hashem's Vasaitivtach Ufia Gitah Sacha. We're now in the third parak of Ezra. This parak starts off Vayiga HaChodesh HaShvi'i, in the month of Tishrei. The month of Tishrei, Vayiga, touched the Bnei Israel. And as a result, the Kedusha of it, the holiness of the month of Tishrei and the Yom Tovim came, and as a result, V'yasifu ha'am ki ish echad al Yerushalayim. What does a Jew do when they're touched with Kedusha? They go up to Yerushalayim. But more than anything else, this pasuk is so powerful because how did they go? Ki ish echad, like one, united. These people that have made the trek, they actually made it. They made it from Galus. They made it from Bavel. They came. They left everything of theirs behind. They are touched in the moment. And then they decide that they're going to all go up together to Yerushalayim. Now, what happens in Yerushalayim? Vayakam Yeshua ben Yotzadak. So who is Yeshua ben Yotzadak? He is going to be the Kohen Gadol. And he is really the nephew of Ezra. Ezra, we know, was actually a Kohen Gadol. Right after him was Shimon HaTzadik, who was the last of the Kohen Gadol from the Anshe Knesset Hagdula. And Ezra would have been, Rashi says that Ezra, had he been the one to go up, had he been the one here, he would have been the Kohen Gadol. But a very beautiful idea is that no, Yeshua ben Yotzadak, now Yotzadak is the father, and he was a Kohen Gadol, and so Yeshua, he is going to be the Kohen Gadol, not because he's the holiest, because again, Ezra is down somewhere else, but because he put in the most effort. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu actually made it such that Ezra wouldn't go down, wouldn't be back in Eretz Yisrael, so that Yotzadak, because otherwise there would have been no chance for Yotzadak. But he deserves it. Him and his brothers, they're Kohanim. Now, he's not called a Kohen Gadol because there's no Beis HaMikdash. And Zerubbabel, who is the political leader. And what do they do? Vayivnu es mizbeach Elokei Yisrael. Lalos alav olos. And just like Kakasud b'tzoras Moshe ish Elokeim. What do they start to build? They're building the mizbeach to give karbanos, to give olos, to give the olah sacrifice. Wow, they come into Yerushalayim, and they are. Now we're allowed, the Gemara talks about how you are allowed to be able to build. Again, there's a machlokas, there's a controversy about it, but they are building the Mizbeach, and they're going to be able to give karbanos even during the time where there is no Beis HaMikdash. And it's kakasub b'tzoras Moshe ish Elokeim. And that is exactly what they're going to do in accordance with Moshe Rabbeinu. Like that's what, that now it's very interesting to understand that what are they going to do? So they are going, now Ezra, just very interestingly, there were 10 times, when we talk about Moshe Rabbeinu, there are 10 times that there was a paraduma, the red heifer. The first is Moshe Rabbeinu. The second is actually Ezra. And then comes, other people. But the idea really is that here what's happening is something that is very, very beautiful. They're going to bring, and how are they going to make this Mizbeach? They establish it on its foundations. What does it mean that they're establishing it on its foundations? They knew the exact spot. You couldn't just build a Mizbeach. They knew that the actual Mizbeach had to be on the same spot. The Mizbeach spot was chosen long before. And that's what it means on the foundation. It's the same exact spot that Adam HaRishon gave his karban, Cain and Hevel, Noach, and Avram did the Akedas Yitzchak. And so this spot is the chosen spot. They found the chosen spot through Nevuah, because remember, we have Chagai, Zechariah and Malachi, so we do have some Nevi'im, that are the last ones standing. And kibe'ima alehem. And why is it? They're coming together because out of fear. The ma'amei ha'aratzos. They're afraid of all the people that are around. And so they're bringing it very quickly. They're building it very quickly. But they're doing it ki'ish achad in numbers. Because there's a power in that. They're going to look substantial among the goyim. They're going to be a real force to be reckoned with. And they're doing it quickly because ultimately, in the back of their minds, do they know for sure that Koresh isn't going to change his mind? So they're trying to get it done expeditiously, so that they actually are able to give Ola la Boker v'la Erev. We know that the Tamid Shel Boker and Tamid Shel Erev on the two ends of the day. The Asu is Chag HaSukkos, and it's during Chag HaSukkos. Why is it so important that it's Sukkos? Because we know Sukkos has 70 karbanos that were given. And so it really is a time of coming together. They're doing this Ola Larego. They're doing Sukkos together, where they're giving karbanos the first time in 52 years since the Chorban. This is a really momentous occasion. And it is Devar Yom B'Yomo, and they did it exactly in accordance, each day, how much they were supposed to, what they were supposed to do, and they're really paying attention. They're trying to Achrekin Olos Tamid. They give the Korban Tamid L'chod Shah, M'chol Mo'ed Hashem M'ksher M'chol Mitzad Niv Nitzav Hashem. And so now they're giving Karbanos, and then comes the Nedava, the pledges. And so from that 7th month of Tishrei, what are they starting to do? They're going to start to build the Beis HaMikdash. They're starting to build the Beis HaMikdash. Now, it is a very amazing experience that we're going to describe. Yatznu kesef l'chotzvim l'charshim ma'achal mishta b'shemen l'tzidonim mitzorim lahavi ate arazim min halabanon al yam yafo kir shiyon koresh melech paras alehem. So if you go back to the time of Shlomo HaMelech, when they had to build the Beis HaMikdash, they really are doing the same thing. They gave money to the stonecutters and the carpenters. They gave food, drink, and oil to the Sidonim and the people from Sur to get the right kind of trees from the Lebanon, and as was paid for mostly by Cyrus, Koresh the king. So why is this significant? So ultimately, these are people who don't have that same means. Shlomo HaMelech was very rich. And so to him, he went to make sure that it was a luxurious experience. Every little thing, up to the wazoo was all luxury, all designer brands. But ultimately, these people don't have that kind of money. They're literally on a grant from the king, and yet they're trying their best. They're putting their best foot forward. They're really trying. But it's not the same. And it puts them in a very precarious situation, because they're overextending themselves, but they're trying their ultimate very best to be able to show the right respect and to relive those times. And it was in the Bishana Hashenis, in the second year, so this is 52 years from the time that they were had the Chorban, they come to Yerushalayim, and they are in the second month. Zerubbabel, who is the political leader, and as we said, Yeshua, who is the spiritual leader, the Kohen Gadol, and all of the Kohanim and the Leviim, they all come, anyone that used to, from Galus, they all come together, V'yamidu asa Leviim ben esrim shana v'mala l'natzeach al melechas Beis Hashem. And so now, every Levi who is 20 years and older are going to make it that they are going to now be working in the Beis Hashem. So they're going to try. They're going to do all the avodah. And remember, what is it, l'natzeach? What is it, what they're supposed to do? So they are, remember we said, there are the singers, there are the guards, there are the lock-uppers, they do, all the menial jobs. But if you go back to the last time that they were counted, that is in the Midbar. And in the Midbar, it wasn't 20 years old, it was 30 years old. And so why is that? So there are these little nuance and differences that it's a pseudo version. It's definitely not the ultimate version. But in fact, in the Midbar, they had a lot more to carry. So you had to be 30 because you had to be really more able-bodied. But here, there's nothing that much to carry. They just have to kind of like we said, they're the people who are singing and guarding, and ultimately they all stand, and it's a very beautiful scene, because what you have is that they start to build. The builders are laying the foundation. And while the builders are laying the foundation, the Kohanim are dressed to the nines. they're dressed up. Some say they're wearing the big day kahuna. Some say they can't wear the big day kahuna. They can't wear the clothing garb because it's really made out of shatnez. And unless you're actually sacrificing in the Beis HaMikdash, which they can't do, they can't be wearing it, but they are dressed up. You could feel the efforts of these Jews who have made it this far and just want to do right by Hashem. And it's a beautiful thing. They're all dressed and they're blowing the chatzrotos, they're blowing the trumpets, and the Leviim are all there. And what does it say? Lahalel, to give praise as Hashem, al yedei David melech Yisrael. Al yedei David melech Yisrael. What does David have to do with it? So this is really the idea of why we're even able to daven. How can we give praise to Hashem? Hashem is everything. He is, he's infinitely kind and generous and merciful, etc., etc. So where do we have the goal to limit him by praising him? So the answer really is that David HaMelech through Tehillim. That's why we have Psukei de Zimra. That's why we start off Na'alecha, V'Shabecha, N'Barecha. So we have the idea that we don't have the goal to say the right words, but David HaMelech did, and as a result, we have the words that we can use to say Lahalal es Hashem, in order to give praise to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Another thing, if we just are reminded, remember when Shlomo HaMelech, when he tried to consecrate the Beis HaMikdash, the first one. Remember, the gates wouldn't open until, what did he do? He said, David Melech Yisrael, until he said, open it for my father. And then HaKadosh Baruch Hu opened up the gates. So here again, you have these people who are steeped in traditions that they've heard about, perhaps people that experienced it a very long time ago. They have a vague, reminiscence of what's happening. And they're trying their very best. They're literally trying to walk the walk and talk the talk. And they're doing it biyachad. They're literally, everyone is all together. What a holy group and a really trying. But what happened? What are they doing there? They cry out Hashem. They're giving thanks to Hashem for His love and kindness and for forever being on Eretz Yisrael. And they're shouting and they're praising. And it's really, on the one hand, it is a beautiful scene. Like we said, it's so heartfelt. They're trying so hard. But then on the other hand, something very, very, very sad happens. Many people who At the same time, there's another voice. So there's a cacophony of voices. And this voice is the voice of the elders, perhaps the people that are 60, 70, 80 years old. And what are they doing? They're crying. And they're sobbing so loudly that it's kind of like the noise is so loud because they're crying and they're singing Hallel and exciting. And you have this dichotomy from the people that remembered what the Bayis Rishon really looked like. They remember the Kedusha. They remember what it was like to have that direct connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. They don't have the Chorban in their minds. They have the beauty of the majestic beauty of when Hashem had His home and He rested His Shekhinah in a different way on us. And we had that direct connection. And they're crying and crying at the differences. Because remember, there were 5 differences. Just with this Beis HaMikdash alone. There wasn't the Eish, there wasn't the Aron, the Kapores, the Kruvim, the Urim and Tumim. That direct connection with Hashem is gone. And so they look at it and they're like, this is very nice. And it's nice to be besimcha. But we remember what it was. And it just pains us. And perhaps it's kind of like the feeling that happens under the chuppah, where we're so happy and the chassan and kala bursting with joy. Everything is good. And then if you really think about it, then we have Imashkachech B'Shalayim. How could it really? It's not totally good. There's a moment of sadness. There's a moment of loss. There's a moment of comparative, where we compare what we had with what we have now. And it's empty as compared. And so the older generation cries, the younger generation is just happy and satisfied. But all of them are still people that were worried. They're worried what's going to happen. Is Koresh going to take this away? And they realize and they recognize what it is to be true, which is that they had a chance. Had everyone come back like a choma, had everyone come back when they were given the opportunity, that Beis HaMikdash would have been forever. But they know, which is what we know, which is that it will be rebuilt, but it won't last. And Gullus is going to happen inevitably. And this is going to be not the happily ever after that they would have liked. And certainly, and it's equal. Each sound, the sound of the simcha and the sound of the non-simcha. And perhaps that's really the idea of Kishim Shemarchim Al Tova Kach Mebarchim Al Ra'a. HaKadosh Baruch Hu in His infinite mercy gives us good and things that seemingly seem bad. And that's our gullus. We have to uncover. We have to decipher. We have to do it ourselves. With every beautiful simcha comes a level of tarnish because we are in gullus, because we don't have the Beis HaMikdash. And that scene, that poignant scene that is described, is one where there are the elders that are crying, and the young people that are just satisfied with what they have. And that is the way that this parak ends. And so, Emir Hashem, we should be able to be zocha, to have the true geula, where we don't have the crying. If we do have crying, it's only tears of joy, and that we don't have to think about Kishim Shemarchim Al Ra'a Kach Mebarchim Al Tova. We can just say Hatov v'Hametiv. Everything is just all is for the good.